Welcome back to the 2 Months podcast presented by Kentwood Ford here in Edmonton. And I'm your host, Joshua Marshall. And we have a very special guest joining us. This is his first time on our podcast. He works with the LA Kings organization. He's a former National Hockey League player as well, too. You can find him on the broadcast. He's always wearing the great suits, looking, styling, and profiling. And we have Darryl Evans. Darryl, how's it going?
Great, Josh. How you doing today?
Not bad, not bad. It's not a bad day here in Edmonton. The weather's kind of getting better. We're gonna get a little bit of rain, but I think when you guys get here later in the series, the weather will be continue to be a little bit better, but probably nothing what it is in Los Angeles. But still complaints, I guess you could say. So and yourself, how are things? Gearing up for a good series, aren't you?
Yeah, it really is. It's exciting time. This time of year is always exciting, and you get a little bit of spring weather going, and yeah, everybody's just itching to get this series started. It seems like it's been forever since the last game, and I know once it gets going here, it's going to be every other day, until the series comes to an end. But it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah. What are you looking forward to most in this series? Like, there's obviously a lot of growth in the Kings organization and with some of their players, and that might be the easiest way to kind of turn things into where we're at. There's been some changes, but there's been a lot of growth in terms of some of the players, the younger players, have stepping through. But you also have that key veteran presence in the back end with Drew and obviously Kopitar and obviously Trevor Lewis. But where does the focus for you lie in this series going as it starts tonight?
I think it goes back to the end of last season. I think Rob Blake, Luke Robitaille, management, ownership, they did a really good job at assessing where the team was at and looking at the Edmonton Oilers. And again, of course, that was 3 straight years that they've played. How do you get past that hurdle, in case you have to play them again? And so here we are 12 months later, and they are meeting again. But again, at some point, you've got to go through the Edmonton Oilers, whether it's the first round or second round. They're a hell of a hockey club. And I think the way they address things where they need to bring in a little bit more of a veteran presence. So the players that they acquired in the offseason, Joel Edmondson, who'd won a cup with St. Louis, Darcy Kemper, who had won a cup with Colorado. You bring in Jeannot, a big physical presence, and then adding, Fogel as well. A lot of playoff experience from him. And then at the trade deadline, they were able to acquire Kuzmenko. So the complexion of the hockey club is different. They're a bigger team. They changed the style from the way they played last year under Jim Hiller this year, a little bit more aggressive, probably a lot more aggressive, generating a lot more off the rush, and some subtle changes defensively as well. Being, again, everything, I think probably one word you'll see consistently is, or hear consistently, is just the aggressiveness. So they believe in themselves. The young players that were already, establishing themselves have taken a big step. Quentin Byfield has taken a huge step this year. Alex Turcotte, he stepped in and he's starting to find his way around the NHL. Back in the blue line, guys like Brent Clark and Jordan Spence, they've taken their game to another level. So the team as a whole is growing overall, and there's a strong belief that they've got what it takes to get it done this year.
Yeah, it definitely seems like the ads and the moves that they've made were really good. And last time I saw you was in Calgary, and obviously Kuzmenko was there this year, and then obviously went to the Flyers. But what a subtle pickup! I think, what is it, 13 points in 9 games, and what does he add? And obviously we saw last night that a 5-4 power play unit can work. Darryl, we've seen the Leafs do it. And it seems like that is a real good weapon that the Kings could put forward here in the playoffs too, and getting some power play goals, which obviously maybe was a bit of a tough road before, but that could be the difference in this series. What's your thought on Kuzmenko fitting in, and why is it fit really well for him too?
He's been a good fit, and I think a lot has to do with the structure that's already in place. This team, this organization has really done a good job at embracing new players. They make it very comfortable for them to come in and be able to excel right off the bat. Um, I think from Kuzmenko, you put him on a line with Kopitar and Kempe right from day one. They didn't have any practice time. The first weekend that he was here, he played back-to-back games against St. Louis and Vegas, and fit in well. He didn't find his way to the score sheet for, I think it was 7 games, but after that, there's been a lot of consistency in his game and finding the sheet. He's shooting the puck more. On the power play in particular, there's been a significant change there. Kings have power play goals in 5 straight games going into the postseason. Kuzmenko is a right-handed shot that they were missing earlier in the year. a couple of years ago when Gabe Velarde was here and then Victor Arvidsson was here. Those guys would, kind of take that position on the power play. Well, they haven't had that the last little bit. So he's really helped in that regard. He's a puck possession guy. He's got great vision, very strong on the puck. He's probably got an underrated shot, a deceptive shot. And he complements the guys that he's out there with. So he allows the Kings to be able to possess the puck more. And then when you get back down to 5-on-5, where the Kings were already very strong, it allows Jim Hill and the coaching staff to be able to spread the bodies out and gives them more depth throughout their lineup. So he's been a really good fit. He's enjoying playing with the Kings, and he's auditioning. He's in a contract here, so I think the Kings are fortunate enough they're going to get the best out of him, and he comes into a really good situation in a team that's ready to take that next step.
Yeah, it definitely looked like a good move. I know Janot was out a little bit here. I haven't seen anything today. It's kind of been a crazy day, but where are we standing with Janot? Is he in tonight, and where is his health going forward here?
Now, he's not in tonight, and the latest that we've gotten is he's still listed as week to week. So unlikely, I would say, for the series. Maybe the tail end, but right now it's listed as week to week, and that's as much information as we've been given. So
Yeah. And what an ad he will be once he does draw back in the lineup, as you know, the physical aspect. Let's move over to Kevin Fiala. Continuous to be a great player, great offensive player, good defensive player, always playing on the right side of the puck. What has he meant to this organization since coming to the LA Kings and just being that star player as he has always has been?
I think, a couple of years ago when the Kings acquired him, they were looking for a game changer. And I think he's provided that. He's really found his way around the group. I know he's been on a lot of different line combinations, and from time to time, I remember when Todd McClellan was here that he would put guys with Kevin, and Kevin would get them going. He kind of brings you into the game. He sees the game in a different way than other players. I think one player that is there's a lot of familiarities is Kuzmenko. And I think that's why we've seen success on the power play is because the chemistry that those two have built. They both pose a threat to shoot, but they're both puck possession guys. They think a step ahead of guys. They put the puck to where you should be going and where the opening is going to be. So Kevin Fiala, I think, has found a different layer in his game this year, another level. He's found consistent line mates now with Byfield and LaFerriere. They've done a really nice job working together. The physicality, I think he's trying to control, his retaliation stuff and getting frustrated with not getting calls made against him. So he's maturing as a player on the ice, but he's given the Kings exactly what they need, and that's that scoring threat each and every time he steps on the ice.
Yeah, he is a threat for sure, and he's got a shot that when he gets that off, it's oftentimes going to be a threatening shot where you're going to create either a goal or create a chance off a rebound that can create that. We obviously there's a lot of focus can be had here in terms of the depth down the middle for both organizations. Put a Hall of Famer out like Kopitar, and we all seen what Danault's been able to do in the playoffs, where he can elevate his game. And obviously, you hinted and talked about earlier what Quinton Byfield's been able to do. The depth down the middle that this Kings organization has to go against, the Oiler likes and whatnot, and just getting that home ice too, where it's going to be an importance. Is that a huge storyline that you're looking forward to, and seeing where some of these matchups lie up? Because once these guys get going, it's hard to bet against kind of the Kopitar's, the Danaults, the Byfields and whatnot. They're just great players to watch and see on an everyday basis here.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing that's been different in now 4 years that these teams have met in the playoffs, that the Kings do have that home ice advantage. And they worked extremely hard this year at Crypto.com Arena, established a franchise best 31 wins. They tied the record for most points, most wins in a season overall. So they feel very comfortable in their building. There's no doubt having the line matchups, each coach uses that to their advantage. But I think because of the growth in Byfield, there's a lot more trust in his game now. Earlier on, back in December, he played head-to-head against Connor McDavid and did a heck of a job. And the Kings, found a way to win that game. But he just goes to show that he can play at that level. Now he's got to do it night in and night out. The Oilers are extremely deep down the middle of the ice with, Draisaitl and McDavid. Those two guys are world-class players, and they make everybody else better. So the Kings are going to need the depth that they have. And, we didn't mention, Sammy Hellenius, who's on that fourth line in the middle. He's a big body. He's long reach. He's a physical player out there. So up the middle of the ice, I think the Kings have, had a good understanding that they need to strengthen up in that regard. Because remember, last year Byfield was primarily playing on the wing, so he's now moved to the position in the middle. He's been able to, drive a line now, and I think that's made it a little bit more difficult for oppositions to match up against the Kings.
Yeah. It's going to be good. And I think Elliot Freeman said the other day that this has been a good audition since the Four Nations for Byfield to, see where he can be at come next year in February in the Olympic conversation in Italy, because he's definitely elevated his game since the Four Nations and continues to do that. You talked about Joel Edmondson earlier. We saw him last year with the Leafs, and obviously saw him in 2019 winning a Stanley Cup with the St. Louis Blues. And Jay Baumeister is a friend of our podcast, and he talks glowingly about him. And that subtle move, I think, is going to make a big difference. I think when we look at this series, as we get down into the series, I think there's going to be a good conversation to be had in terms of the reason why the Kings went out to get Joel Edmondson to neutralize, stop the cycle, stop offensive plays for the Oilers. You see him on a daily basis, a nightly basis here. What has he meant to the back end, which is a great back end for the Kings too? And just, I know you talked about him earlier, but just a player that probably doesn't get a lot of respect maybe throughout the league or love. Just, I don't know why. The guy's a hell of a player, and I seeing him in Leafs locker room last year was pretty good to see, and the growth that he's been able to do for young guys. But what has he meant to you guys in the Kings organization here?
I think he's one of those guys that's probably most appreciated by his teammates, respected by his opponents. The experience that he brings, a lot of the year he was playing alongside Brandt Clarke, and that allowed Clarke's game to really grow because, Edmondson's more of a stay-at-home type of defenseman, where Clarke's your kind of, mover and groover, so to speak. And that allowed Clarke to be able to do his thing out there. And Edmondson, cleaned up a lot of things. So Clarke's game grew through the course of the season. I think when you look at the Kings' penalty killing numbers, Joel Edmondson, who plays a big part of that, he's a reflection as to why the Kings are having success here. Continuously blocking shots, long reach out there. He's got the respect around the league as well. The opposition look differently upon the Kings when you got a guy like that with that type of presence on the ice. So he's allowed the growth of guys like Spence and Clarke, right-handed shot defensemen, and he's given them stability back in the blue line while being able to eat up some big minutes. So he's been, a real valuable player, and I think we're going to even see more of an impact that he has now at this time of year when you get into postseason play. Again, you can't teach players how to play in the postseason. You've got to work your way through it. You got to kind of learn as you're doing it, and he can definitely, shed some light on the experiences that he's had, the moments that he's been over the years.
Yeah. Well, very well said. We'll finish up on this one. Darcy Kuemper, the last time the Oilers fans would have saw him in the playoffs would have been when he was with the Avalanche, and the Avalanche went on to win the Stanley Cup. And he obviously another good ad bringing him back. And it's kind of a theme we were talking about earlier, where you're seeing some players go back to organizations as they were at before, obviously with him. And, there's Tanev back in Winnipeg. There's Lars Eller back in Washington. But what has it meant? Obviously, the record at home and what he's meant in the whole, and probably should be in top 3 Vezina candidates for what he's meant to the organization and the season he's had for the Kings. But the threat you guys have in net, the Kings have in net with Darcy Kuemper. Can you talk about what you saw from his game this year and elevating it from the past time he was with you guys?
Yeah, there's no doubt there's a comfort, with Darcy in that. Going back to when the Kings first reacquired him in the trade with Dubois and that, he felt really comfortable coming here. He said the system's very predictable. The guys are very trusting, and he thought it was an environment that was suited for a goaltender. And I think he's shown that each and every night that he steps on the ice for the Kings. Great communicator. He's probably got a little bit more of a different disposition than a lot of goaltenders have. He's kind of outgoing. He's got a personality. The other guys are a little quieter. Not that they don't have a personality, but they kind of keep to themselves. But I think he interacts and engages a little bit more. The way he plays net, he presents himself big. And again, because of the trust that he has with the guys that he's on the ice with, he, that's allowed his numbers to be able to soar. The Kings this year, led by Darcy between the pipes, 42 times, or pardon me, 45 times this year, two or fewer goals against. And that's just second to to the Winnipeg Jets. So a lot of that has to do with his work in between the nets. Not a lot of second opportunities come off, and doing a good job at controlling rebounds and the confidence. He's got his swagger back. He's excited to play in the moment that he's in right now. He knows he's up against some great snipers in the Edmonton Oilers, and he knows what with the difficulties the Kings have had the last few years against the Edmonton Oilers. So he's looking to elevate his game and hopefully be a difference maker. But the Kings, again, a credit to them. They sense that they needed to upgrade in that department, and there's no doubt that Darcy Kemper has given them that upgrade.
Yeah, he's done an amazing job. And I guess one more I want to ask you is Jim Hiller and that coaching staff. You get to deal with them a lot, and how cool is it to kind of see a guy that's been a long time assistant coach, but just getting that opportunity to be a head coach, and the smarts, the details, the preparation that staff puts in on a daily basis. What can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, he and his staff have done a really good job. And I think having had the luxury of being an associate right here, getting to know the players, looking at the systems that were in place, how things worked, maybe some things that didn't quite work, or you would change if you got an opportunity. And to him, he had some strong beliefs as to what he could do to help the team. And I think management felt very confident that when they give him the position that what he had in place, his plan, his blueprint for the season moving forward was a good plan. Now you got to get your players to buy in. I think he's a good communicator. He communicates well with us when we talk to him, when we're asking questions and things like that. So I would believe that would be just as strong with his players, if not even stronger. They trust him. He trusts them. He puts them into situations where they can excel. And that's what you want as a player. I think the coaching staff itself communicate well. I don't think there's any egos there. I think they all feel that they have a responsibility. Of course, it all falls and filters through him. But at the end of the day, I think he empowers the guys that are in position to, whether it be the penalty kill, whether breakouts, things like that. He lets them do their job. So it's been nice. I think because of the style that the Kings have played, more upbeat, more up tempo, more aggressive, more of an attack team via the rush. I think that excites players, guys like Kevin Fiala that we talked about, Adrian Kempe, Byfield. We all know you've got to check to win,
Yeah.
but it's nice to be able to play with a little bit of pace and create some stuff going the other way. So I think under his systems and style, the Kings spend less time in the defensive zone than they used to in the past, and they're spending more time putting the opposition on their heels, and that's what they're going to look to do in the series against the Edmonton Oilers.
Well, Darryl, it's a pleasure to have you on. I know I just kind of got into this media thing, and just we've been doing this podcast for a while, but being around the rink for the first time this year and just seeing you in Calgary, and obviously the way these players connect with you. And I'm a big believer in God, and I believe that's a great way to go in life. And I believe you're the same in terms of believing in the big guy upstairs and doing the right things going forward in life. And it means a lot to do this interview with you. I know it's kind of last minute thrown at you, but I appreciate the time we had with you here, and looking forward to seeing you down the road here. And all the best to the Kings and you and your family as well. So,
all right, young man. Well, I'd like to wish you nothing but the best of luck, and we're looking for a long ride in the postseason, and hopefully we'll get a chance to chit chat a little bit down the road. But keep up the great work. Stay healthy and well. God bless you, and I always believe, young man, we're in good hands.
yes, we are. Thank you.